Who am I? So
your badge says who you are,
yeah,
right?
my badge, so you can see my badge. Here's my badge. I'm David Ornstein, and I work at Microsoft, and I've been building software for about 20 years, and I got sucked into building Wiki software to help our teams do a better job, one of the teams that I was working on.
Wow. What's a wiki?
What's a wiki? So a wiki is a collaboratively edited website. It's a website that everybody can edit, and in particular, there's a big emphasis on how tightly linked together the different pages are. The pages have names, and then when you refer to one page by name, you get a link automatically. And so instead of doing insert hyperlink all over the place to actually connect all the information together, you get it automatically by putting in the names of the pages.
And the name of the page would be like
so
my
it uses
wiki page.
geeky capitalization conventions, right? Right. My wiki page with the M and the W and the P capitalized, and so the system says, "Oh, that must be the name of a page." And if the page exists, it just makes it into a link, makes your reference into a link. And if the page doesn't exist, it annotates it a special way so that you can tell that there isn't a page yet, but if you click on it, it builds the page for you. So it's a very fast way to lay down a lot of sort of interconnected information.
Now, did you know the guy who invented wikis works here too, or?
Yeah, so Ward Cunningham came to work here, I think, about a year ago, and he works in the Patterns and Practices group, and helping our enterprise customers build big software systems and do it well. And I knew Ward kind of on and off. I did before I came to Microsoft, I did a bunch of consulting in the object-oriented space, a bunch of small talk work, and Ward spent a long time doing small talk stuff, and we ran into each other a number of times. And my first exposure to Wiki was on his Wiki, which is a big. It's at like c2.com, and he built it as a way to bring together people who were thinking about using patterns in software development, and that turned into a really excellent community and a resource. So.
Wow. And you built the software that runs the Channel 9 Wiki, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And you call it FlexWiki?
Yeah, so FlexWiki is the name of the software, named after, I had some other name about a week before I let the outside world know what it was called, and that name turned out to collide with something else that already existed, the value of internet search engines. And so I renamed it FlexWiki in a fit of a really high-powered branding. FlexWiki started off as an internal tool inside of my team at Microsoft that I built really to try to help some of the collaboration and communications things that were going on the team. And a couple other teams at Microsoft started using it, and then it got Chris Anderson, who many of you guys know is an architect on the Avalon team, put it out on his website at the last, right about when we did the last PDC. And people got excited by it on the outside, and eventually we released it outside. And along the way, earlier on in that process, when you guys were building out Channel 9, your team grabbed the code, took a fork of it, and went to town on integrating it with Channel 9, and I think it's been pretty darn successful. A lot of good landing pad for community collaboration and input and stuff like that. A lot of the sites, a lot of the places in the wiki about what people would like to see about various products and feature enhancements and stuff like that. It's a nice adjunct and supporter of some of the bidirectional communication for our customers.
Yeah, the Internet Explorer team has one of the bigger wikis up there, and they have hundreds or thousands of people all coming in and giving feature requests and stuff.
I wish I could keep track of it all. I stop in every now and then and I try to participate, but there's just so much of it. And it's a good thing about customers and a good thing about collaboration. But I mean, I can't imagine. How many feeds do you have? How many feeds do you read daily?
1,358 or something like that.
That's really sick.
Subscribed to another 4 last night. It's sick, but it's also it's how you spot trends before anybody else does. So. Yeah. So is writing wiki software your day job? Or is it sort of like how I do my blog at nights and weekends and when the boss isn't looking?
No, well, my day job was working on the Avalon team, working on a bunch of document technology stuff as part of Longhorn and Windows.
Right.
And now I work in the Platforms and Business Management group, which is a group that does product and business management support for the various product teams, particularly in the platforms group inside of Windows. I've never really had an official job as a software developer at Microsoft. I joined the company as an architect and then moved pretty quickly into program management and theoretically, program managers don't write code that ships, and I don't actually think I've written any code at Microsoft that's shipped in a product yet. But I came here with a need to write software and experience writing software, and I don't think I'll ever be able to stop. So FlexWiki was sort of my side project to keep my coding skills up.
Now, how do you got hired in as an architect?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get hired in as an architect? What's the secret to doing that? That's not a job title given to very many people, right?
Company. Well, so before I came to Microsoft, I was the chief technical officer of a company called Nuvo Media. We made the Rocket Book, which is the electronic book device and publishing and commerce systems in the sort of at the tail end of the .com bubble, which didn't look like a bubble at the time, but that's life. And we did a whole bunch of collaboration with Microsoft on electronic book technologies and standards. We did a bunch of work on something called the Open eBook publication structure, which is this standard XML format for doing electronic publishing for books.
Yeah.
And the company that I was working for got sold, and a bunch of the people that I had gotten to know up here called me up when I no longer was going to stay with the company that bought us, and recruited me up to Redmond, and brought my family up here, and so I joined Microsoft's electronic book team as an architect, as the supply chain architect. I think it was quite and did a bunch of software architecture. That
sounds like a guy who watches FedEx to see where the packages are going.
No, it was a lot of it had to do with in the publishing world. You have this value chain somewhere between, you get writers, authors, and agents, and publishers, and booksellers, and distributors, and all these folks in the middle. And for every dollar, you have to sort of spread it out over all these people and figure out who's got what responsibilities and where you can make everything cost less and bring the prices down and make more money for everybody and get more stuff flowing through. And it's a 500-year-old industry, and so it moves. Change is slow.
Yep.
So I'd spent a couple of years working in that space and getting to know a lot of people in that space. And
how has the ebook industry come out?
Better than, nowhere near as well as everybody hoped, and better than everybody expected as the .com bubble was exploding. I think. I mean, it's continues to be on a. I don't follow it as closely as I did maybe a year ago, but the growth is continuing to climb, and the derivative of the growth is continuing to climb, and yet it hasn't done as well as everybody had sort of hoped that it would do. I don't think anybody really imagined that paper was going to disappear in any short period of time, but even when you take the sort of hype off of the top of it, it's been hard to sustain the level of kind of looking forward investment that's required to get growth.
Yeah.
Which that's one of the reasons that it was possible in that environment, in the late 90s, because people were really willing to throw quite a lot of money at good ideas because there was a lot of money floating around.
What was the ebooks idea misplaced and just put in the wrong area? Because could you even conceive that there would be somebody like me who's reading 1,300 feeds from around the internet every night or every other night?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think that those things are really mutually exclusive or competitive. I mean, there are a bunch of really killer scenarios around electronic books, like the shoulder injury for the college student who's carrying around the backpack full of books, right? Or being able to get books when you're traveling and on the road and you want to carry 10 things on the airplane. Frankly, even just sitting in bed and reading a book at night, being able to do annotations on it and searches and stuff like that, which are these things that you kind of take for granted if you're dealing with a web page or a Word document or something like that on your computer, but it'd be nice to be able to have, in that I'm reading a book in bed, right, experience.
Right. Back to the wiki. Why did you do FlexWiki? Why did we need more wiki software? Why couldn't we just use the 700 lines of code that Word wrote? Or
well, a couple of different reasons. So the bad reason is David wanted to write some code, right, and I needed to kind of keep my experience with that alive, and it was a good opportunity to do that.
What languages did you use?
It's in C#.
C#.
.NET app. The good reason is that
a little closer.
Well, so there are a bunch of fabulous Wiki implementations out there, and there are lots and lots of Wiki implementations that aren't fabulous, that are good enough that people have written over a weekend and played around with. The thing, that I experimented a little bit with some of the existing Wiki implementations here at Microsoft, but one of the dynamics that we have here, which isn't in play in all, it is in play in some, but isn't in play in all of the environments where other wikis are running, is this connectedness of the information spaces that different teams need. So, at Microsoft we have lots of different product teams, and they have connected interests, right? They have dependencies on each other, and they have overlapping areas and partnerships to help pull together something like Windows. There's a lot of different teams working together. So, if a team working on Windows and a team working on Office each want to have a wiki, they might both want to have a page called Release Process. And because these pages have names and the names are really important, you have namespace issues, just like you have in a programming language. And on the one hand, you can say, okay, well, fine, we'll have a Windows wiki, or Windows Team Number 1 wiki and an Office Team Number 1 wiki, Windows Team 1 and Windows Team 2. They can have these completely separate wikis, and then everybody has to install a copy on their own server, and they have completely sort of separated namespaces. The problem is, sometimes these things are actually shared concepts, right? Like, I don't know, property page, some shared concept that actually lives in a place between multiple teams where they're collaborating. And so what I ended up doing in FlexWiki, and I think this is the real reason for FlexWiki to exist, as opposed to there being just kind of other wikis, is actually building, in fact, mirroring the .NET namespace architecture in FlexWiki. So we have a server here running a copy of FlexWiki that has several hundred namespaces on it. Each of those corresponds to a team that's doing some stuff. And inside of that namespace, all the names are unique, just like you would have in a .NET programming language, but you can import across namespaces. And so I can say, look, I'm working with this other team over there, and I'm going to import their namespace into mine, so I can refer to something that's a concept that exists in my space or in their space, and you get the linking to happen automatically.
Right.
And so that ability to blend these namespaces together, have them not completely separated, have there not be just one, but be able to kind of selectively blend the namespaces together is, I think, a key thing. Well, is one of the key things that's different about FlexWiki.
Wow. What do wikis need to? I mean, Wiki hasn't hit the mainstream yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people who do use Wiki. Mm-hmm. Like the Wikipedia, which is an
amazing thing. Yep.
Yeah, but it hasn't hit the mainstream consciousness yet. Blogs are a little bit more ahead of that. What's it gonna take for the average Joe on the street to use a wiki?
I don't know, and I'm not entirely convinced that it is going to grow up to be something that the average Joe on the street should be using. I know that there are some situations where it's just absolutely the perfect thing, and I know that there are many other situations where it's absolutely the wrong thing, and so I kind of look at us all engaged in a process of discovery to figure out where the slider lives between those two worlds.
Tell us some reasons, places it wouldn't be the right thing or would be the right thing.
Well, so here's an example. So when you're putting content into a wiki, one of the things, and probably not everybody agrees on exactly the definition of a wiki, but I think most people would agree that almost all wikis have pages that have names and this linking thing that happens with the names between the pages. For that to work well, you actually have to, A, consciously think a little bit about the sort of semantic structure of the information that you're dealing with, and B, be able to think about giving those things names and then referring to them by those names in your writing. And that's something that software developers do naturally all the time, right? When you name a class that you create and you're going to write some code and you want to use that, it's easy to remember to do that, right? But not everybody thinks that way. Not everybody thinks at that level of consciousness, and it's one of these kind of cost-benefit things where there's some incremental cost associated with doing it that way and a bunch of benefit that for some people in some situations is entirely obvious, and they go, oh yes, that's worth it, and I can do that, and it's a natural act. And for other people it's like, oh my god, what are these weird capitalized names all slammed together? It doesn't make sense. Yeah. And so that's a place where I think there's probably a limit. There may be a limit, and I mean, people are experimenting with, well, what happens if you require the names not to look so geeky, right? And that's great, but the further you move away from that, the further away you can actually be going to you move further away from being able to do the automatic linking well, right? And the further away you get away from doing the automatic linking, the more it becomes a little bit like, a website that anybody can edit, which is actually what you get with WebDAV and front page and IIS. I mean, I can put up a web server that anybody can edit, right? That's easy. That's not the trick with wikis. The trick is this, at least for me, in my mind, the trick is this mapping of the kind of conceptual semantic space for whatever it is that you're working in down to the structure of the information and then the linking across that. And in particular, in a group process, it makes explicit what those concepts are, right? All this, when you go into a meeting and you're designing software with people and you come up with this concept and you give it a name and you draw some pictures on the board and you walk out and everybody feels really good because they all walked out with that name and they think they understood each other. But the reality is it takes a month for that to get sort of cemented in place and to know what it really means. And to give a handle to that concept that needs to get solidified is really powerful in a design environment.
Yeah.
Right? And so, Wikipedia aside, which I think is an extraordinary single point thing, a large portion of the successful wikis are about things that happen in the software design space, or at least happen in a space where people are kind of they're willing to think very explicitly about what they're thinking about.
Okay. Wow. How is the world of work changing? I mean, that's one of the things I read about is how blogging is changing PR and marketing, and because the world now is the size of a conference room, and the word of mouth network is sped up, 20,000 times, over what it used to be in the 1980s or whatnot. How are you seeing it? You're right in the middle of the world of work changing radically due to wikis and blogs and other social software and Groove. Groove just got bought by us. And, IM. I mean, during 9/11, I was IMing. With
God, you're giving me the list. It's and I think the answer is at the
my
same
Xbox
time.
went to Skype. It's a wacky world, right? But this new world of work is completely different than what it was for my dad or for.
Yeah, I mean, I think a large part of what people do. So as people move from like building, producing stuff in factories, right, to sort of information and knowledge work, a lot of what people are doing is around collaboration, right, and that the collaboration before you had all of these high performance kind of communications adjuncts, I guess, in the computer space. It was largely about just this people stuff, right? It's let's get together, we'll have a meeting, we'll talk about a bunch of stuff, there's a bunch of relationships, it's about who can manage whom to get what done. And I think what's happened is that human, pure kind of human action and interaction level it's really become sort of striated with a whole bunch of different levels at which decision making and communication and power all live. And the person who knows how to IM somebody who has the answer to a question when you're sitting in a meeting, that is an empowered person, and is a person who's going to be able to get things done, right? And so you've got, websites and blogs and Usenet discussion groups and email and being able to search your email quickly and wikis and all this kind of stuff, which gives people a whole set of tools, and there are very different dynamics going on at each of those layers, because not everybody's uniformly participating in all of them, right? And the more of those that you're participating in, the more tools you have for getting stuff done and for influencing the world around you. So, I mean, it's I joke about how many feeds did you say? I don't know,
13 or 15,
right? But I don't know. I've got 150 of them, and I read 2,000 mail messages a day, and there's no question that the more you can manage to participate and engage in all of those things, it's got the distraction tax. It's very hard to stay on top of that stuff, and it's very hard to keep your work-life balance and all this kind of stuff constrained, right? And,
what life balance?
I probably shouldn't say this on national television, but I was reading email on the phone, not long after we got to the hospital for my last child being born.
Yeah.
Those of you who have children know that there can be boring periods. My
wife was in the hospital for a week, and the Overlake Hospital has Wi-Fi in the hospital. So.
Right.
God bless Overlake.
That's right. Over-the-air exchange syncing. But on the other hand, it's extraordinary the number of kind of power levers and dynamics that exist. And I don't mean to be focused on power, it's also on effectiveness and communication and the ability to have knowledge and work with other people and develop relationships. That what's going on well and effectively at one level is not what's going on effectively in one of these other. Each of these mediums is different.
Where do you want to take your wiki tool? Do you want to add anything to it, or?
Well,
or is that sort of done? Are you?
It's not done. Oh my God, it's not done. I wish I had nothing better to be doing than to be working on it more. One of the biggest challenges is it's a community project, and so it has all the joys and frustrations of a community project where nobody's full-time job is working on that, and it's been kind of slower than I would like it to be over the last couple of months because I've been super busy doing my real job, and other people have been busy. But I mean, I actually look at FlexWiki as it's my personal. So we talked about earlier, what's the value of wikis? Are they good for everything? Are they good? Who are they good for? What is it? Where does it add value? I'm absolutely convinced that it adds value in a bunch of places, and I'm absolutely convinced that there are a bunch of places where it doesn't. And I really want to know where that knob is. And in particular, I want to understand the space where it does add value, where its benefits outweigh its disadvantages. Because it's got some disadvantages, right? And so for me, FlexWiki is about foisting a big social experiment on Microsoft. And it's a great petri dish to do this in, right? That it's an opportunity for hundreds of teams around the company to play with this stuff and for it to get deep traction and become an integral part of the heartbeat of that team, and for other places it to be, they tried it and they played with it for 3 days and nobody thought it had any value, and understanding why that was.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a multi-year experiment for me, and I don't like discovering that Wiki is bad at 5 or 6 things and good at 2. That's actually a really positive outcome because I think of it like an experiment, and proving or disproving the hypothesis is an equally valid outcome.
Yeah.
So for me, it's less important to add features, right? And it's more important to kind of feed the care and feeding of that experiment in some senses.
Very cool. Now you're one of the first guys in an office who has a projector up on, right? But why do you have a pretty nice screen here? You have a tablet PC, and then you have a projector up on the wall. What do you use the projector for?
2 things. First of all, my office gets to be a conference room, and I do a lot of work with other people. So bug triage, reviewing a document, looking at a PowerPoint deck or something like that. But I also I give you. I think you guys did an interview with Bill Hill.
Yeah.
Right, and it was actually his idea that I stole when we worked in the same
he's
group.
the only other place I've seen a projector in an office.
Yeah, so we were buying monitors and flat screen monitors and stuff like that for the various teams my team had a bunch of budget, and I had a choice between getting 2 flat screens, or I took a look at the projectors and discovered they were about the same cost as one of the screens, and so I got one of each. And his theory is that, sorry Bill if I get this wrong, that cognitively it's natural to organize our attention into planes, and things that are in the foreground of your attention and things that are in the background, and that if you force all of those planes together into one plane cognitively, it's very hard to get stuff done. And with a single big screen, I have this great, lovely, flat screen in front of me here that's got lots and lots of stuff on it.
Yeah.
But I've got the document I'm trying to read and understand, and the email I'm trying to write. Plus, I've got my IM notifications and my calendar. I got to remember what meeting I'm going to, and all this. So there's this foreground stuff and this background stuff that's there, and it makes it hard to do a good job at either. Remember, oh God, I have to get up and go to some meeting, and also focus on some actual thinking that I have to be doing in a really focused kind of way. And so his theory is that if you can take the secondary stuff and put it in your peripheral space, you know, your incoming mail you don't want to look at immediately, your calendar, your you know, the weather, whatever it is, Mount St. Helens when it's erupting, the stuff that can be secondary, you put that off into the background, and you can do a better job on the foreground stuff and a better job on the background stuff.
So how's it working out for you?
I think he's basically right. And because I find that it's easier to work on this screen here when I'm really focused on something like a document and get a bunch of this other stuff out into the background. But I've also found that it's just plain useful when you get other people in the office to actually be able to put stuff up that they can see instead of having them huddling around the monitor. Yeah.
How long does the lamp? You leave it on 24 hours? Or?
No, I try to turn it off when I go off. Let's see. So I think I got it maybe 8 months ago, and I run it pretty much all day long each day, but I turn it off when I go home, and the lamp is still the same lamp.
Still the same lamp?
Still the same lamp. It was in it when I got it.
Very cool. Got to try that myself.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I ran into a guy in the halls a couple of days ago who has 2 projectors set up, and they're sitting on his desk, and they're only projecting maybe 25-inch images on the wall, but he's got it right at a corner intersection in his office, and he's got one here and one over here. And so it's kind of like doing, you know, multi-mon like this in the corner, and he's got his desk kind of moved up against it, so it's right here. He's got these two different images. It's quite cool.
Very cool. Can you give us a demo of FlexWiki and show us how to create a wiki page and all that fun stuff?
Sure.
You got anything else cool to show us?
Oh, I'd probably have to think about that for a minute
all
or
right.
two. Let's see. So can you watch what's up there?
Sure.
So let me
You can show
get our little bug triage out of here.
Show the lovely Seattle rain while you're setting up.
Okay.
So is there going to be a tablet PC version of the FlexWiki at some point that you can use inking on?
Anybody who's interested in contributing those features is welcome to visit flexwiki.com. Hold on a second. Let me just see who that is at my door. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. We're back.
So this is the homepage for FlexWiki here. Well, one of the good things about this being a web page is I can actually spin the size of the text up here, make it a little bit easier to see. So let's go off and visit the page for the demo. I'm going to type in the name of the page here. This is just a quick and easy way to create a page. So we'll come over here, and what you see is a place where you can type in the content for your page, and a bunch of buttons over on the right-hand side, like save this and cancel and so forth. So I can type something very simple like, here is the demo for Channel 9. And you'll notice that I've actually capitalized Channel 9 in this funny way here with the capital letters up there. And I can't spell either. Okay, so I'll hit save, and now we'll have our page. And what you see here is there's the title of the page across the top, the page for the demo. And then here's the text that I put in here. Here's the demo for Channel 9. And you'll see that when I hover over that, well, I don't hover over it, it's got this funny dotted underline under it, which says, that's a topic that it doesn't really exist yet. And all you got to do is click on it, and you can go ahead and create the topic. So if we hover over that, you see that, and then we'll go in and we'll actually go create this page here. So we'll say summary. Channel 9 is the coolest website around. And then on this page I'll say Channel 9 is a site devoted to engaging with Microsoft's developer community, and it's called Channel 9 reference to
The United Airlines.
listening to the United, I'm spelling that correctly?
Yep.
Airlines cockpit transmissions. And then we'll go ahead and save that page.
Now, how do you save? Oh, you're
And then just hit the save button down here.
okay.
And so now we have this page here that we were talking about, and we can go on and fill a bunch of these different links in. But let me just go back here for a second to the page we came from. It's here, and hit refresh. And you'll see that that's actually now turned into a link. I don't have to go back here and fix that link up or anything like that. It knows that the page exists.
Right.
So you can basically go wander around and put in text and do this hyperlinking. You can do a variety of other kinds of formatting, bold and headings and stuff like that. And the system keeps track of all the changes that have happened to every page. So let me go back to the front page for FlexWiki here for a second. We'll go to, okay, so here's some news about somebody adding a feature into FlexWiki. So we'll come down to this page here. And you'll see over on the left here, the system keeps a history of every single change that's happened to every page. And so you can click up here and get show changes, and the system will actually highlight the changes that have happened. So you can see down in green here, you can see what's actually changed. So it's nice because it's an easy way to keep track of what's going on. There are subscriptions, so you have RSS feeds, and you can keep track of the pages that are changing.
So when you first started this whole site was blank, and you started typing just like you did with the demo page, right?
Yeah, it was pretty much just empty. And let's see, what's it like right now? We'll go take a look here. This is a list of recent changes, a bunch of changes that people have been making. You can see our changes up there on the top here, changes that other people have been making, over the last few days. And then here's history of changes to the pages and so forth and so forth. Did you catch all that?
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so actually, sure, there's 400 or 500 pages here now, and this is basically the community. This is the FlexWiki community, the FlexWiki user and developer community.
Right.
But there are lots of installations of this of FlexWiki in different places. We have a bunch of them on different machines inside here. Microsoft. If you go out to there's a page called I Use It, which is the place where we ask people to put a list to list sites that they have in the outside world or on intranets that where they're using it. You can see a bunch of different places where people are using this using FlexWiki in the outside.
That's really killer.
Yeah.
Neat stuff.
Yeah.
How many lines of code? How long did it take you to build this thing?
Oh, heck if I know how many lines of code it is. It's probably, at this point, 150, 200 classes, maybe 250 classes.
Wow.
I mean, it's kind of come in waves. One of the big additions that happened I guess just around the beginning of this year, at the end of last year, was the introduction of WikiTalk, which is an object-oriented programming language that's integrated in with the FlexWiki markup, so you can actually write dynamic content. Like if you go back to the front page here, you'll see, go back to this front page. This list of topics here, for example, is dynamically generated by a little fragment of WikiTalk that goes out and finds the high-level topics that have changed recently and puts them up there. And so there's a object-oriented programming language that you have this little syntax that you can use inside of FlexWiki, and kind of drops down as a gateway using reflection down into the actual .NET implementation of FlexWiki, so you can actually get at all the objects that make the system go.
Now, can you look at popularity of pages or anything like that?
No.
You're not tracking hits on the pages or inbound. You can go to
it's just a web.
and
There's a web. I mean, it's a web server, and so there's a web log. There's a web access log, and so I can actually go look at the hits, and every now and then I go in there and take a look. But the biggest indicator of what's popular is what people are actually changing.
Yeah.
Because that's the greatest level, is when there's real engagement in the community. Things are actually changing, and that's what's hot. And being able to see that over the RSS feeds, for example, is an easy way to see that.
Do you think about that? Cool. Anything else that we should know about wikis?
Well, I should probably say that even though I started it, there are a whole bunch of other people who have kind of helped make the project, live. There are a bunch of folks inside of Microsoft who've made significant contributions, and a whole bunch of volunteers. There's a couple of dozen people outside of Microsoft who've been making contributions to this as a shared source project, and I should definitely give a plug for Craig Andera, who's our incredible build master contributor to this. He's built a huge continuous integration system. I should just make a plug for great software development here. Why don't you point that back up at the screen here for just a quick second. I'm going to go to builds.flexwiki.com. We have a continuous integration system running where every time there's a check-in anywhere, if the connectivity would work, anytime there's a check-in anywhere, the system goes off and automatically this integration system pulls down all the latest code, does a build, runs all the 400 or 500 unit tests against that, sends out mail, and so every time there's a change, there's a new build, and it's all regression tested and so forth. And this has been a big, especially with a distributed project where you got people all over the place working on it. Continuous integration has been really key to kind of keeping the software working. So
very cool. Well, thanks for spending a little bit of time with us today.
Yeah, sure, that's right.
Neat stuff, and thanks for your contribution to Channel 9.
Sure, you're welcome.